Welcome to Optimal Game State. A few months back, we got rules for the Blacktalons box, which contained 5 unique characters from the Warhammer Plus cartoon and numerous books. We've seen a preview of the Darkoath group from the Hammer and Bolter episode Monsters, and we just got rules for the Callis and Toll models from the Hammer and Bolter as well. This time, though, we've got the rules for Warcry before the models came out, which is super cool. Callis and Toll are both members of the Order of Azir, the witch hunters of the Age of Sigmar setting. To be fair, Toll seems to fit the classic witch hunter style a little bit more with the hat and the stakes. Callis instead is an ex-city guard with some good armor and wields 2 pistols. He seems to get dragged into these things by Toll and eventually does join the Order himself. They both appear on the Warhammer Plus show Hammer and Bolter in the episode Undercity. I have watched it and enjoyed it. It was pretty light and straightforward, but had a nice Age of Sigmar feel to it. It definitely had me interested in checking out more about the 2 lads. There are also a couple of short stories and 3 books where Callis and Toll appear. The first is City of Secrets, which was a relatively early release for the Age of Sigmar, coming out in 2017, and is based in the city of Excelsis in the realm of Gur. By all reports, it's a pretty good view of Age of Sigmar from the streets, rather than the superhero Stormcast content that's typically out there. Unfortunately, it is not available on Audible, and the book seems pretty tricky to get your hands on. The second one in the line is The Silver Shard. That is up on Audible. Again, it is saving Excelsis, this time with a MacGuffin to hunt somewhere in the jungles. The third book is just called Callis and Toll, but we've yet to see what the story is because it hasn't quite come out yet. Now, this box release has 6 models. Callis and Toll, of course. Valius is a Stormcast, and he looks like he's a Lord Castellant from the Hammerhall, along with his Griffin Baltus. Lissa is a thief, while Varentia is a weaver of secrets, some sort of spy master, I guess. Lissa has a skull on her belt, which in the show we saw her summon a ghost out of, who looked a bit like a banshee and was friendly for Lissa, helped her out. Varentia has a weird mask and a glove with a glowing crystal, which seems to let her see through the eyes of her pets. If you look close, you can see her cat has a similar crystal around his neck. Tom Hughes apparently sculpted all but Valius and Baldus, and honestly, I think he did a really great job on these. Rather than this being a bespoke warband, these continue that grey area we saw with the Blacktalons. They are all unique characters, so you can only ever have one of them, but they don't get full Bladeborn rules, so you could in theory run these in a campaign, have them advance, get injured, or die as a normal fighter would. They are all part of the Order of Azir warband, which they share with Hexbane's Hunters Bladeborn warband. So you can mix any of the fighters between those 2 warbands with one or both of the heroes with Toll and Hexbane. Heading over to the plot. So we are looking at the entire warband here, although I've only pointed out the new models. And we have some pretty good numbers here. Valius is a real beast. He's at a similar point on the plot to the Kernot Huntmaster, which is a pretty good place to be. He doesn't top the damage for Order, but at 9.3 he's not far off because they top out at 10. Baltus looks to be a good damage dealer for quite cheap, but yeah, as we can see, he is relatively low on wounds. Toll seems solid and above average damage and wounds, while Callis looks a little underwhelming at first until you realise that that damage point is actually his range version. Lissa and Varentia are looking a little bit less impressive, so hopefully their abilities will make up for it. The unmarked dots, as I said, are the rest of the Order of Azir, including the doggos, who you can see at the bottom left. The Order of Azir have 3 generic abilities, a reaction, a triple, and a quad. The triple and the quad don't actually appear on the PDF for Saviours. Instead, that's from the Hexbane Hunters White Dwarf episode. The assumption here is that it was accidentally left out of the Saviours version and should be used, as they're both from the Order of Azir, and the Saviours do have the right rune marks to use them. The reaction and the quad both use the warrior rune mark, which previously was for everyone apart from the doggos, but now we have a few non-warrior humans in this warband. The reaction is Grim Resolve, which lets you remove D3 wounds after you get targeted but before the dice are rolled. Reactions are always a tricky one, as often losing an action means it's just not worth it. Broadly, there are 2 types of reactions that are worth using. Ones where the ability is so good that it's worth spending the action, and ones where the ability will save a fighter from dying. Grim Resolve is the second. If you think your fighter is going to die and you still have actions left, you might as well spend one to remove D3 wounds in the hope that you can hang on a little longer. If they die, you're going to lose the actions anyway, so there's no harm. So this is a solid, if not amazing reaction. You don't really want to use it, but you'll be happy to have it when you do. The triple ability is Brand of Righteousness. This is for the hero only, so it's only going to be Hexblade or Toill. This increases the damage of crits for the fighter until the end of the activation. So a triple 6 will be great if you can get a bunch of crits, but useless if you don't manage to roll any 6s. We'll look at the exact numbers with Toill in a few seconds to work out when and where you should use it. The quad is Hallowed Vengeance. Now, you can only use this if a friendly was killed by an enemy fighter in the previous activation, so it is kind of time-bound. This quad will give friendly fighters with the Warrior Rune Mark a bonus action to target the fighter who did the killing. Now, if they can't, then they don't get the free action. This was a pretty nice ability with Hexblade's Hunters, as the solid ranged abilities they have meant they were often in range to get that free attack. As we'll see, Callis and Toll both have ranged abilities and the Warrior Rune Mark, so they can now add to that. This does make this a very competitive option along with Rampage. The first profile we have to look at is Hanover Toll himself. He's very similar to Haskell Hexbane, but trades 1 toughness for 1 extra crit. Wounds are great for the points. Melee damage is better than you expect, and he has a good range stack. The weapon profiles are at that nice point where 2 range shots are slightly better than a move and attack, but you'd still prefer to start an activation in melee. The ability unique to him is a triple, Right Tool for the Job, which will let Toll crit on 5s as well as 6s. He has an impressive melee crit, so that is kind of nice. We also have Brand of Righteousness, as before, which will increase crit damage. So let's compare. First for baseline. Onslaught is a double that adds 1 dice. That will bring the melee damage from 4.6 to 5.8. Instead, if we use Right Tool for the Job, the damage against T4 pushes up to 6.6. Finally, using Brand of Righteousness will increase the damage by 0.6 for each dice value. So a 2 value is similar to an Onslaught, a 4 value is better than Brand, and that tops out at 8.2 with a triple 6. So there are options. If you have a double, use Onslaught. If you have a triple with 4 or better, use Brand of Righteousness. If you have a triple with 3 or lower, use Right Tool for the Job. Unfortunately, these are all melee boosts, so they don't help their range attack, but they do all seem to be good options. Now, those numbers were all calculated versus T4. You maybe might need to have another review and double check if you're going up against T3 or T5 just to see how it compares. The next fighter we have is Armand Callis. Again, the raw stats are fantastic. Wounds are over what you'd expect for points. The melee attack isn't great, but the range attack is doing 3.5 average damage. So for 2 shots, that's 7 damage. That's crazy good. This is similar to the first Fang from the Untamed Beasts, but Callis trades a little of the melee damage for some extra wounds. He does have the Warrior Rune Mark, so he can use the reaction and he can trigger the quad. His unique ability is a triple, which gives him an extra range attack, and also doubles the range on that, up to 16 inches. A bonus attack for a triple is solid, and an ability that effectively moves you 8 inches closer to target. If you squint a little, that's kind of like a Rampage for a triple. That's really, really good. While the other 2 had good wounds, Valius is an absolute tank. With 30 wounds, he's actually under the curve for his points, but at a certain point, extra wounds don't really matter. He's 6 toughness, so it's going to be hard to hit him, and his ability, another triple, will reduce damage he receives for the rest of the turn. His damage is top tier for Order. The highest damage fighters for Order, like Neve Blacktalon or the Kurnoth Huntmaster, do 10 damage on average, so 9.3 isn't too far off that. Valius isn't slow with his 4 move, but he's not fast either. You could spend 65 points more to get Neve as an ally with 7 move, but Valius is a lot more affordable. In addition to doing great damage, he's also a great roadblock. If he's facing off against your opponent's big guy, it will take a lot for Valius to go down, especially if you have a triple or 2 to give him. I like him a lot. Baltius is the loyal companion of Valius. This is a cheaper version of the normal Gryph-hound. This profile loses 4 wounds and saves 20 points. Now, he doesn't have the Warrior Rune Mark, so he doesn't get any abilities for the faction. It's also worth pointing out that there are 2 doggos in the Order of Vizier faction, Crotbiter and Ratspy, who are 55 points each. They're same speed, they're 2 less wounds, 1 less toughness, but they only do 1.6 damage compared to the 4 Baltas. Both doggos will cost 110 points and get you more actions and I guess be more wounds and can be more places. But don't write Baltas off completely though. He is the second most efficient damage within the faction after Amos Duncaro. So there is some merit to him, although I would be worried about those low wounds. Mistress Varentia, again, has good health for her points, but her damage profiles are a little lackluster. You'd hope for 4 average damage on melee for 100 points. She's got 3, which isn't too much off. Her range attack is probably a little bit more attractive. Against T4, you're hitting on 4s and 5s, doing 3 damage with a roll of 6, doing 6 damage. You are only rolling 1 dice though, so it's going to be a little unreliable, but it's not terrible as an attack. Now, she does not have Warrior, so she has no reaction or quad. She's really there for her triple ability. It's called Secrets from the Shadows. You pick a triple, double, or quad set of dice that your opponent has, then you roll a single dice and add the value of your own triple. If you get a total of 7 or more, your opponent has to discard their dice unused. Best case, of course, is a triple 6, in which case even rolling a 1 is going to succeed. And if you have a triple 6 and your opponent has a quad, that feels like a no-brainer. You're trading up and you're getting value. Now, if you are trading a triple to get rid of one of your opponent's doubles, maybe that's not so obvious. It can still be a good option, though. If you know your opponent needs to spend that double to get an extra move to get onto the objective that would win them the game, then denying them that is fantastic. I suspect Mistress Varentia is probably something a highly skilled player will be able to use amazingly, but an average player always runs the risk of making a poor trade, or even worse, using the ability with low value and it fluffing, having no effect. On a more abstract level, she might be a little bit feels bad. I certainly wouldn't play her against a new player. Having your opponent remove your quad before you get to use it could really suck. Last out of the Saviours, we have the Thief, Lissa Ravina. It's easy to miss from the model, but she actually has the fly rune mark. Presumably she's flinging that grappling hook, leaping around, and running along walls. Again, her wounds are above average. The weapon is relatively poor, but it is 3 range, which is nice. She's not a warrior, so no reaction, no quad. Like the Mistress, she's here for her ability. And again, it is another triple. Tangle them up. This is a range 3, which works well with her attack. You get to remove 2 dice from the melee attack actions of a target for the turn. That's pretty brutal. Obviously, you're going to want to use this against your enemy's big guy. You just get to maybe just outside their reach with that 3 inches, and then you're neutralizing their damage. It's in ways close to a reverse Brugate. The Brugate gives a friendly +3 dice for their next attack. If the target of Lissa is going to attack twice, then Lissa is effectively moving 4 dice from that, which is pretty nice. Obviously, the challenge here is we've now got a ton of cool triple abilities to use, but a limited number of dice to power them. Lissa was the last of the Saviours, but don't forget we do have the Hexbane's Hunters. Hexbane and Pock have been seeing a lot of play as a pair, as this Bladeborn Warband is in faction to the Order of Vizier, which is the same faction of all the Saviours. We can take Pock without Hexbane if we want. Indeed, any of these fighters can be mixed in. If you're interested in Callis Toll, then you probably should pick up Hexbane's Hunters as well. They are still in the store. I just checked. So yeah, the option is there. Combined, they will give you a decent number of options to mess around with. And for more info, there is a video I did on Hexbane's Hunters, which will be linked in the description. Okay, so what do we have? Honestly, everything here is awesome. Callis and Toll are just solid all-round fighters. Valius should be unkillable, while Lissa and Varentia have super interesting abilities that let you control how your opponent plays the game. Baltas isn't super exciting, but he's fast and does good damage for his points. You do get the mix and pick with Hexbane's Hunters, which are a very, very good warband. I suspect that these fighters are all a little bit more powerful than they would have been if they were normal fighters. That's because each of these fighters can only be taken once, so even if one is overtuned, it's not like you can spam it. That said, when you have numerous models all overtuned, like I think we might have here, you're probably onto a good thing. In total, the box comes to 745 points, leaving 255 points to play with. Hexbane Hunters come to 585 points, and between two boxes you have a decent number of options to play around with. As only Toill and Hexbane are heroes, you will have hero slots free for some allies. If you check through the channel, you will find a review I did on all the Order Warband's heroes. But if you want something a little bit more up to date, check out Off Metamusing's recent video. Again, I'll link it in the comments. Highlights include Knave Blacktalon, Caltia Zandire, and maybe one of the dwarfs, either from the Krajan Overlords for 5 profit, or the Dispossessed for their Over My Dead Body ability. The Saviours of Cinderfall are due out for pre-order this weekend. They will be expensive, probably more expensive than a full Warcry warband. They do look good though, and I'll be definitely trying to get my hands on them. In addition to Warcry rules, they also have some pretty good Age of Sigmar rules, and did get rules so you can actually play them as heroes in Clear City. I do still see copies of the Blacktalons floating around, so hopefully GW will make sure that this stays in print. But nonetheless, I will be hammering refresh on the website of my local store, just in case.
Thanks for making it all the way to the end. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Each week I put up a new video talking about one of Games Workshop's specialist games. The goal is always to try and make the best possible two-player experience. If this is something you'd find interesting, please subscribe to the channel and comment to let me know what you'd like to see in future.